I'm proud to be able to sit in almost like the quiet moments. I noticed that was one where I would put whether it was like a podcast, music, whatever it might be, just to drown out any thoughts that I might have when I was by myself. With people, it's different. But I've truly been proud of, and I know they would, is, sitting in the quiet, sitting with yourself, acknowledging everything that you have done, giving yourself some grace when you don't think that what you're doing is enough, but at the same time, like I've put in the work.
All right, Kyle.
Hey, buddy.
The time has come.
Here it is.
The time has come.
I'm here.
And, it is, I got to say something about you that, I for everybody listening, I know Kyle from the gym. And Kyle and I have a funny relationship. And I always like referred to Kyle, to Becky, my wife, in a lot of ways, is Kyle's like the little brother I never really wanted. And I mean that in a good way, because I don't know very many individuals that I've kind of come across in a capacity where I don't see them all the time, that I have felt a click right away with, and it's pretty cool. And so I appreciate that about you, and thank you for coming in here and rocking the Christmas tee.
See that? Yeah. I'm about to say Jason Tharp original right
there. That's right. So right out of the gate, we talk about a hope on here, and hope being important as two things. One is a starting point. It's a place for people to begin. Yeah. And then as we start going down our journey, our path, and figuring out what we want to do, we're going to fail. And a lot of times people will veer off the path, right or left. But we also need a way back to that path. And we also define hope as that here. So we like to help people start and then also find your way back. Yeah. So with that being said, and knowing that knowledge, if you were able to go back in your life at any point in time, at whatever age, what hope would you give yourself, and why?
Yeah, so obviously you told me that this question has changed. I thought I was actually coming into this prepared for this, but you switched it on me a little bit. But I would say that, honestly, my answer is the same, and it would have been almost 2 years ago, where the piece of hope would have been telling myself that everything's going to be okay, that I'm going to be okay, that everything that is going to happen from here on out will somehow turn into a positive. And that date being, as we've talked about many times, my father passing away. So he passed away January 13th. And I would have said, going back to January 14th, telling myself, hey, man, you're going to be good. Everything's going to move forward. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. Take that, harness it, and be okay with who you're going to turn into, even though who you are now is all great too.
Right.
So
how much value do you think it is in knowing those dark spots in your life and building where you're trying to go now?
I mean, immense value. It's just one where the dark eventually leads into the light, in the way I see it. And it's one where going back on it and reflecting is the one where it's like, I mean, some people can say, oh, it can't get any worse than this, which I would say it couldn't for me at the time. But at the same point, I see value in the fact knowing that, like, look where you've come, look how far you've come now.
Right.
Look at who you are, look at what you have around you. And I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that, like, there's parts of you that, they always talk about, like, those that leave us, they never actually leave.
Yeah.
Do you find that, like, in moments now, even that you're like, man, Dad would say this, or do you find that you pull that out a lot in your life now?
Oh, without a doubt. And one, thank you for the wonderful intro. And just listening to it, it was one where, again, I hear it and I'm like, wow. It's like I definitely hear, like, my dad in that too, which I extremely appreciate. And yeah, with that, there's definitely times when I'm sitting there and his voice just comes to me, or his presence comes to me, or something along those lines where I'm like, yeah, this is him right there. I get that all the time. I actually just had an experience not too long ago. I had to go back to the Beaver Creek house, my hometown house, and drop off something for my mom. But while I was there, she goes, hey, can you check out the house, make sure everything's okay? She's in Florida right now. But just being in that house, it was very weird in a sense. I haven't been there that much. And it was definitely a presence. There's just a presence through there. And just like walking through, there were some parts that I was like, oh man, this is kind of weird. I'm getting this weird tension in like my chest, throughout my body. But then at some points too, I'm just looking around. I'm like, this is where I grew up. This is amazing. There's still like smells and everything that take you right back to certain little like experiences that you had, like sitting with him, sitting with my family and everything. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he have any like things that you were like, oh man, like that, like dad truisms that he ever dropped on you? He repeated that you feel like once you have kids, you're going to be like, all right, I got to carry that one on to my kid too.
You're talking about like certain sayings?
Yeah, just like whatever.
You know, it's funny. I don't know if there's too many sayings that he gave to us, but it was little things like he would always end his sentences. We always joke, and there you go. And just little things like that. Or one that my wife and I always joke about, it would be when he was explaining something to you, or if like you did something and he thought there was maybe like a better way, he goes, oh, you got to do it like this. And he would show you, and we would joke that by the end of it, we're like, huh, this actually worked out. And it was either easy or whatever we were doing at the time. It's like, this was easier. It kind of made more sense, which at the time you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, here he goes again, just telling us something that I don't need to hear right now. I'm doing just fine with this. But then you try and you're like, oh, okay, fine. I see where he was going with this again. So yeah, little things like that. But I wouldn't say any particular sayings, but definitely just the way he presented himself, treated other people. That was definitely something that I will always take with me. I mean, definitely one of those who never met a stranger at his funeral. We always talked that we had, when we were talking to like the funeral director and everything, they were asking us how much time we wanted for it. And I think the limit was like 4 hours or something like that we could have the area. And going through, we all kind of looked at each other, my family and I, and like, that might not actually be enough time for everybody to get through like the viewing and like talking to us and everything. And it wasn't. It was one where there was just a line of people coming through. And by the end of it, they're coming up, they're like, hey, you still have like crowds and crowds of people out there. And it was just one. It's like, there you go. Yeah. I was like, that makes so much sense. And that's exactly what it is.
Right. But well, first, I don't want to talk about that the whole time. But to like button that up. So, I've told you this before too. There's no doubt in my mind, as a father myself, who you are and what you are, he would be like totally stoked about it. So
appreciate that.
You're doing a good job.
Thanks, buddy.
But, it's interesting because you're explaining this stuff and I'm drawing a parallel of how I know you at the gym and stuff. And there's a lot of very parallel things on how you project like your, I don't know. I mean, I told you when I started working on my structure of my company, you were one of the personalities I pulled into it as like a force, right? And you're like, I don't see myself being that. And I'm like, well, no. And I think I forget, it just slipped my mind what it was, but
you called me an enforcer.
The enforcer.
All I thought was, I thought of like the Mighty Ducks, the Bash Brothers and that. I'm like, the enforcer. I was like, all right, we'll go with that.
No, it was the enforcer. And what I mean by that is that you have about you this magnetic personality that you have the ability, without knowing that you're doing it, of pulling what people think they can't do out of themselves. And most of the time it's by doing some crazy, like, I mean, I'll use an example the other day. Like you came into a class and as soon as you walked in, I was like, oh shit. Like, because I know that I'm going to have to beat you or I'm going to have to try.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, ugh. And he as always, makes fun of the weight I'm getting, which is not light, but he just said, and he comes back with more. And I kind of laugh because like, oh, great. I'm like, okay, cool. And the funny thing is you wrote the workout.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And at the end of it, we had just like these little pulse squats. And to kind of give everybody an illustrative idea of what I mean by enforcer is, Kyle had an 80-pound kettlebell. I had a 60-pound kettlebell. And at the end of the workout, everybody was complaining about how hard it was. Kyle grabs both the 80-pound and 60-pound kettlebell and does the last set of the pulse squats with that. And that's what I mean by that is you challenge people to see past limits. And I think you use yourself in that sort of way. And I'm going to guess that part of what made your dad know no strangers was he was welcoming like that as well.
Yes.
And in that process, as you've come to this world of figuring out what you want strength training wise, what you want to do coaching wise and stuff like that, how much of the ability do you think, or do you even recognize that being able to take away that threat feel has helped people get to where they want to go? Or do you find that it's harder when you get serious? And like, what made you take that approach, I guess is what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah. And I think, I remember one time we had a conversation where you told me, and I took it as an amazing compliment, that I do very well with beginners.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I think you are just perfect for beginners to like the gym, all that. And I would like to think, and it's been confirmed over and over that I'm a very welcoming person.
Mm-hmm.
I truly love people. I do. And I like to listen to people. I like to understand people, and I like to really get to know people. And it's one where with that, I think I provide a space where it's like, hey, we're going to maybe ease into this at first. I'm not going to force you to do anything like you don't want, maybe I'll challenge this a little bit, but at the same time, I want you to actually enjoy your time here. I want you to enjoy our interaction. I want you to enjoy your experience. And through that, then we start building a little confidence. And slowly but surely, people start to see, lo and behold, wow, I'm stronger than I think. I can do something like maybe cardio-wise. I can do it longer than I thought I ever could. And they start building that confidence. Mm-hmm. And then I start pushing a little bit more. Part of it too, again, I like joking with people. Some of it may even be like, hey, I've seen that you've used that weight like 2-3 weeks in a row. Why don't we try going up a little bit or something like that? And it's just like those little quips back and forth. But it's just, I guess, honestly, some of it's just as innate feeling where I know, maybe through my own experience, how intimidating some of that can be. And I just want to be someone who, you can feel like you can ask anything. You can come up and, just interact with me, or at the same time, build into, like we can create some momentum, and you don't feel like, hey, I have to give it like everything I have right now. But at the same time, I'm just going to keep coming back, keep working, and get better every single time.
Right.
And I feel like if I just presented with this like angry, just intense attitude, maybe I might lose that person.
Right.
So I think the value comes in, the small continuous successes.
Yeah. So you're a strong man that leads with his heart. That's what you're saying.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you I know that you're totally into Olympic lifting, and you're very protective of your barbell.
Can't tell.
And tell me why. Tell me what it is about it that connects you so much to it.
Well, I think it started without a doubt with the fact that I thought it looked cool and everything. I'm like, oh wow, these people are just chucking these immense amounts of weight like over their head, all of that. But then when I started with it, I'll admit a lot of people who are very successful with it are like shorter individuals. And I mean, I'm not like super tall by any means, but I'm taller. And it was one where it just presented this weird challenge where I'm like, oh, okay, I think I'm a decently strong person, but then I get tanked with, like 115 pounds because my technique's a little bit off. So then it turns into, hey, oh, cool. I can challenge myself by working on this skill. And slowly but surely, I still have like some videos from when I started like 5-6 years ago that I'll go back and look at where I'm like, oh my gosh, look how cruddy I look right there. And then now where I'm using a weight that's like double the amount and it looks really solid. But it was just one where it was this kind of this crossroads between strength, skill, and one that you couldn't really take shortcuts to it. It was like, hey, I can try to muscle this up right now, but at the same time, if I do that, eventually I'm going to hit a point where I can't do that anymore, and I'm probably either one, I might even get hurt. Two, I'm not going to be able to progress in the way that I want to. So I've always liked just that kind of like mental challenge, and it's one where at that moment you can't really think of anything else, which you guys tried to distract me plenty of times, but in that moment, I can really focus and push everything out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. We would never.
Yeah, never do that to me. Yeah.
No, not at all. And so if I'm somebody that looks at you, I mean, you're a strong dude, you're in shape. But what I find is really interesting with you is that there's no intimidation whatsoever, whether it's somebody that like me that has felt like very comfortable at the gym, or somebody that has come in that is just like, why am I at this gym?
Mm-hmm.
How much of what you've learned through Olympic lifting and your growth in that stuff and in your strength training with other athletes, do you think translates down to the everyday person that maybe right now is listening to this going like, God, I just want to feel good about myself? Like what are those steps that you would say is a good starting point for somebody like that?
To get started, or how did I get to
like
just
what
understand?
in your journey? What have you learned that helps you so good at with those people that come in that say like, I never go to the gym, or I know you as a coach, you've heard this a million times. Like, what is your approach that if I'm somebody listening that could encourage me to just try?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one, I think what has really helped me, and I think growing up too, I was definitely a kid where, I mean, I got along with a lot of people, but at the same time, starting out, I always think about the fact that I just we had like a toy room at the house, and I would just sit there by myself and like play different things. And I mean, I had a couple friends here and there, but at the same time, I was just content to be by myself. And actually, one of my neighbors down the street, his name's Skylar, he would come down all the time and just ask if I wanted to play basketball. Or I should say he would ask my mom, and then she'd come and be like, hey, do you want to go down and play with Skylar? I'm like, I'm good right now. Don't want to. And I mean, he was just persistent with it. And it was one where eventually I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll just go play. And then all of a sudden it turned into, hey, I'm down at Skylar's all the time, just having fun, hanging out. After that, I mean, I started making quite a few more friends and everything. But it was one where just taking that, it was finally that day where I think it was my mom who looked, she goes, why don't you just go give it a chance? And I was like, you know what, today I'm going to. And it was that little step, and it was scary at first, but then I found out, hey, I love just going and like playing basketball. I like going outside. I like just playing. And then also I started out in strength conditioning at a high school, Licking Heights High School. And it was definitely one where you get to interact with a lot of different kids and everything. And some of them, I mean, at first, like you'd get mad if they like showed up late to maybe lifting or something like that. And then the next thing you know, you're hearing stories about some of these kids' home lives are very rough. And I'm sure it's like that everywhere. But some of the stories that I ended up hearing was like, oh, I'm just happy that you're here right now. Mm. And that really flipped my approach and my thought process as far as, I mean, strength and conditioning, fitness overall. I'm like, okay, I can make this a very poor experience very quickly, or I can make it a very positive experience. And, you know, maybe it's not like the proper way to go about it, or we might be doing something where it's like, is this going to get your results like right now? No, but we're looking at the future right here. And it was just one where I wanted to use it as a tool for people to, one, just learn how resilient they can be, and two, maybe like find something out about themselves along the way where it's like, hey, oh, wow, I really enjoy how my body feels after this. I also feel like I have more like mental clarity, everything. Sometimes too, I can use that place as somewhere where I can just get out of my head and truly just not think for a little bit.
Mm.
And so I found, like the gym, everything like that to be a place where, I mean, there's a multitude of different utilizations of it. And it's, I think if more people just find it, give it a try, but it also requires the right set of circumstances. But it's still one where, again, taking that initial step can be scary, but in the end, there's so many positives that come about it.
So how do you set yourself up for when you do try it and then you like ultimately like fall off the treadmill or something embarrassing happens or what gets you to come back in the door next day?
Well, hopefully again, you have found a place that has a solid community behind it. I will say that's definitely one thing about Peak that I love. And we talk about that it's not just a gym, but it really is a community and a family there. I think also kind of like, I think we had this conversation just the other day where, what do we use? The analogy for like kicking a ball forward and then it might fall back a little bit where, there might be something that happens where, hey, say I went up and kicked this ball, 50 feet, 100 feet, whatever the distance is, but it's a pretty good distance. You go up to it and maybe on the next one, heck, you go to kick it, you whiff it, and maybe somehow it clips your heel and it rolls back 2-3 feet. Guess what? You still kicked it further the initial time. So it's like, hey, we might have these stumbling like blocks and everything that we stumble on, move back a little bit, but then we keep moving forward. We keep kicking that ball forward a little further every single time. And eventually, heck, you get so good at it that you stop missing or whiffing the ball altogether and it's just constantly kicking forward.
Right.
But again, if you do find that time where you slip, you fall, we hope you'll have that person next to you who's there to lift you up. I mean, you're definitely one who motivates people. Like you said, I love motivating people to push past the limits that they've set on themselves.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that, one of the things that you run into at the gym is comparison. Everybody kind of looks around and compares their progress with other people's progress. Like as somebody that is a coach that also falls in the comparison trap, how do you tell somebody, like, what is it? How do you take what you've learned in your own comparisons and apply it to somebody that is just like, going through the same process themselves?
Yeah. And that's still a tough one too, because I'm obviously still working my way through that. But one piece that I really like, because again, like I said, I get caught with that all the time, is I sit there for a second and I identify it now. It's one where before you get so used to it that it just becomes second nature. And then it just puts you into this hole. But being able to identify that being the first step, and the second step, you sit there with it. And then you look back on all that you have accomplished to this point. It's like, look at what everything that I've done. Like I've taken, like maybe even if it's your first day, it's like, hey, wow, look how much I've been avoiding this. But now I've actually stepped into this space and I'm here. Bravo to you. You just accomplished probably the hardest thing that you're going to do in that time there. And just continuing to like kind of look at the accomplishments and appreciate it. And then also, I mean, on a similar level too, trying to bring awareness to the fact that if you're thinking this, maybe someone else is thinking this too. It's like, hey, if I'm feeling this uncomfortable, there's got to be somebody else feeling this uncomfortable, and that's okay. And being all right with that. And it's one where just continuing to, strive to improve, strive to get better. And again, constantly moving that ball down the field. I mean, sky's the limit with that.
Yeah.
But
how do you feel about things like what our minds can, this is a bigger conversation, just gym stuff, but it works in the gym as well. But what I'm trying to get at is that anybody listening here, they can take these tools that you're talking about. We're just using context of gym because how I know you and what you what you do and everything. But the idea that like, I don't call it affirmations. I don't know what it is, but when I'm telling you all the time in class, like I don't get tired. It might hurt, but that doesn't mean I'm tired, right?
Exactly.
Like, how much does the mind play in the mindset in gym versus life? And how they bridge, I guess. So
yeah. Well, and I would say, obviously at Peak, we have like our pillars of performance. And I mean, the central one, the main one is mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the most pivotal part. And again, I always like to think about it. And I know Alex, my boss, friend of ours, would say, like, almost think about it like a pond. It's like you throw a stone into the middle of it, mindset, and it ripples out into everything, every part of that pond. So without a doubt, that's the biggest component. And really, that's what we talk about when people first come in. It's like, hey, you've already made the first biggest step in determining that you need this, you would like to be here. And that's fantastic. You've shifted into understanding that, like, this is going to be a piece of the overall puzzle, but at the same time, it all started from that mindset piece.
Yeah,
so,
it's pretty cool.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's amazing, like when you take out the intimidation factor
Mm-hmm.
of going into a gym.
Yeah,
because I think everybody goes to the gym thinking everybody's judging me, everybody's whatever.
something.
And then you got Kyle doing his goofy dance and all this stuff like that, and having a good time. And you're right. It is a community. It's a welcoming kind of thing that really, I think, helps break that down. But at the same time, people need to understand that, like, you can create this also in your own mind, right?
Yes.
And so I guess one of the questions would be is, like, as a mindset person, I know that you're that's one of the big things you're tackling right now.
Yes.
Is getting your mindset. What would you say was like the first big hurdle in getting started on that you, because I'm going to bet, and this is speculative, you haven't told me this part, but you avoided trying it for a long time until you finally was like, all right, whatever, I'll try. Like, back to your point, I'll go into the gym and try. And this time the gym in your mind. What was like the first big hurdle that presented itself, and how did you overcome it?
So I think the biggest, it's a great question. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Gotcha. So wait, can you say it one more time?
So you the same thing as going into the gym of the mind.
So for sure.
There was a hurdle that you were afraid of. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
Afraid to start. And that was what you're avoiding was.
Mm-hmm.
What encouraged you to try? And then what eventually got you over that hurdle?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, coming back to it, definitely the part that got me past it and that helped me was my community. And I will say in this instance, it would be like my home life. My wife, Thalia, I mean, she's amazing. That was definitely one where, with some guidance from her, and then also finally understanding that I was just, I don't know, in a bad place mentally, even though I wouldn't show that outwardly. I was just sad. I was angry. And it was one where I guess I was tired of feeling like that and being like, how can I go? What is a better way to go about this? And then sitting with myself and partially just accepting too that it was okay. It was okay to let myself start working on this mindset. I think before I truly believed that, with these kind of things, any difficulty, stuff like that, it's just like, hey, compartmentalize it, put it down deep, don't worry about it and move on. And especially don't make it anybody else's problem. But then it was the piece of, hey, no, it's okay to like lean on others. It's okay to express this. And then after that, there was definitely this part where I would get nervous about it, where I'm like, oh, I don't know how, like, I feel like there's this change, this momentum coming, but I don't know like where to go with that. But then being okay with, I guess, just being at that point and just being me and letting everything else come into it. Like whether it was like her, Thalia, whether it was you all at peak and everything talking to me. Because again, that was my first real experience with overall mindset training, and different like pieces about it. And finally just being willing to, put in the work for it, or at least just be willing to hear it out and then starting to understand myself better. So I don't know if that answers it, but yeah.
That's a good answer. And I think that What would you say is in going through that hurdle, and you've clearly spent time thinking about building it up.
Yes.
How long did it take you to realize that hurdle was complete bullshit?
A while. And, or I guess I should say, I think I knew the whole time that it was bullshit, but I think I was still clinging to the fact that that hurdle was right there and that I created something bigger than what it actually was. Yeah.
Yeah. I always call it, we get in this line of distractions where we have like two forks in the road,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the warrior versus the warrior, right? So it's people that fight through it versus people that worry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the worry section is full of distractions because they got cookies, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over here. And what happens is at the end of it, you think you're making progress, but you actually dig in this pit.
Bigger hole.
And you're just digging a self-pity pit for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you don't recognize it long enough, you realize that like, oh shit, I am in this big, huge hole. Now I got to climb all the way out of it, and it could be building a wall or it could be what other things.
Yeah.
But I think that, what you're illustrating beautifully is this idea that like, all along you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
But you continue to do it. Do you think how was that something that in growing up was just something that was like you kind of avoid that kind of stuff? Like because I know you come from a small town too, like smallish, like more country-ish town, like, kind of same sort of idea where it was like men are men, and, you don't talk about that emotional stuff and, all that stuff like that. Did that play a role or just curious?
And it's funny too, because I don't think I ever had that piece. I don't know. I truly can't identify where it came either, because I will say my parents definitely gave me space to be open, express everything there. But I think part of it too, and I know we talked about this earlier, was me starting to compare myself to others. And I think that's where I started building it. Even one being, to no fault of her own, my older sister. My sister is brilliant, smart, always was one where she got amazing grades. And there is a funny story where apparently I looked at my mom. I don't know how old I was younger, but I think it was around elementary school. But I was like, man, I can't wait to get to the grade like Amanda where I don't have homework. Being like, because she never had homework, but that was because she always got it done in school, done in class. And I was taking this stuff home and looking at it for hours and hours and hours. And like looking back on that, then I started, comparing myself through that lens where I'm like, oh man. And not that I was a troublemaker or anything, but comparatively, I was the troublemaker. So I'm like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with me a little bit. But at the same time, I didn't want to ever express any of that too, because I was also told growing up, wow, people would just be like, wow, your kids are so great. Wow, they never caused any trouble, anything like that. And that's probably where I start to see these barriers starting to get put up without me even knowing it. And again, comparing to others, the next thing I know, lo and behold, today I'm still struggling with it, still working through it and doing much, much better with it. But now I've gotten to the part where I feel that comparison starting to come on, and I grasp it, I identify it, I sit with it for a second. And again, it's not just throwing it off to the wayside, but it's thinking about it, sitting with a second, understanding why, taking value from it. And then hopefully that cycle, again, either becomes less and less, or we just get through it quicker each and every time. But again, I think that's kind of...
Yeah, I can empathize with that because, I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And, it took a long time for me to understand that, like, I don't have to put everybody first. Mm-hmm. And that I'm actually better if I don't.
It's hard to come to that.
But, going through those hurdles, I can attest to the fact too that it is hard when you start to kind of tackle that because, and tell me if you believe this or not, that the reason why is because you've gotten to know yourself so well in that role that facing it is so scary because that means now I got to learn who this Kyle is.
Who it is.
Yeah.
And I think on another note too, you almost create this story that you're going to create. For me, it's creating conflict with others. I don't want to do that. I'm a very happy, jovial person, and seeing someone else upset because of me is just one that it just rips me to shreds. And so with that, you almost create this story that it's like, hey, if I veer off from who I'm supposed to be, whatever that means in quotations, that, it's going to create this conflict somewhere. When in reality, again, you're scared of kind of facing this new, brighter, amazing self that is always underneath and just waiting to be revealed.
Isn't it crazy that like all the stuff that you avoid is actually the key that unlocks everything that you've really wanted all along?
I would say you almost put more work into avoiding the best parts about it.
Yeah.
It
is. So I do want to circle back on one question before we wrap up this thing. So you had mentioned at the beginning that if you could go back and give hope to the 2 year ago you.
Yeah.
I want to revisit that with this question. Knowing what you know now and the work you've done on yourself, if you could have that conversation with that person in real life, tell me a couple of things that you'd be proud of who you are now that would give that person that like, no way.
Yeah. I would say being you is more than enough. And it's amazing. Like just I mean, when I revisit that one more time, I lost track of my thought with that one.
So you're going back. The 2 year ago you.
Yep.
What attributes about yourself now, present, are you most proud of that would be almost like a beacon for that version?
It's hard to put into words because it's just like an overall understanding of myself. I'm proud to be able to sit in almost like the quiet moments. I noticed that was one where I would put whether it was like a podcast, music, whatever it might be, just to drown out any thoughts that I might have when I was by myself. With people, it's different. But I've truly been proud of, and I know they would, is, sitting in the quiet, sitting with yourself, acknowledging everything that you have done, giving yourself some grace when, you don't think that what you're doing is enough, but at the same time, like I've put in the work, and just being proud of the accomplishment of, finding, or at least moving towards finding like my true self.
Dude, that's a killer answer, man. Yeah.
Cool.
Dude, I don't know where we go from there. I mean, I think that is a perfect way to wrap this up. But, before we wrap it up though, again, man, I just want to just express my gratitude for having you in my life. There's been many times where, I've thought about like, oh, I should skip today. And I'm like, but today, one, you're always there. So it's like, I know that if I don't show up, Kyle's going to go like, where were you? And I do appreciate, and I expressed this to Rob when he was on here too, your subtle ways of getting me to push outside of whether it's a little walk by and just that's it, and it's, you have a skill set that I want you to really understand is really powerful. And it's the ability to adjust who you are on the fly with the situation that needs to be presented. And you understand people really, really well. And rather than thinking that you need to build a wall up from that, I want to like celebrate the fact that you're digging into that, because cool. I can't wait to see 2 years from now that Kyle that believes the same way that I see and I believe in him emerge and see what you're going to be doing then, because I think it's going to be really amazing stuff.
Thanks, dude.
But yeah. So guys, here's what Kyle and I need you to do. We need you to lift that heavy button, hit that subscribe button, share this stuff. All of Kyle's links are going to be in all the show descriptions. We're going to also put a link in there so that way if you want to get coached by this amazing guy, I want to put a link in there that you can go sign up at the gym and come in and visit him. Is it like a free like consultation? How does it work if somebody wants to come in?
I'd say come in. You can either walk in, you can schedule an appointment, but we would just sit down. initially talk about goals, give a tour, and
is that like a
from there.
free,
It is free.
It's free.
Yeah, that is free.
Alright.
Free
So
strategy session.
definitely
Well,
worth
so,
coming in if you're like Kyle said, if you're looking at community, if you're looking for mindset,
Yes.
you know, all that. That's the mindset elements actually drove me there. Just on a personal note, it wasn't the gym part. For me, it was total about tackling the mindset. So it really is a cool, unique gym that has all of those elements in there. But yeah, please help us out. We're both on a mission differently about spreading hope, different way of doing it. But we are wanting to have impact. And we're not just talking about it, we're doing it. And the way that you can help us in that mission is to share this and spread it around and all that good stuff like that. And we also want to just celebrate you, the listener. I mean, going through life, it can be tough, you know, and things go sideways sometimes. And a lot of times we want to have those moments where we want to give up. But the truth is when we pick it back up and do that one more rep, we find a strength inside of ourselves that brings about an evolution that will not only change your world, but the world around you. So yeah, I just appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming in. And I hope this wasn't so painful for you. You did a great job.
Awesome.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. Cool.
Foxland Media. Think big.